Well, hi, hello. Thank you for being back. I'm excited as always to chat with you. This is now, I think, your third episode just in general with us, which is crazy. But this one, we are a little bit more focused on type 1 diabetes and gastroparesis since we are talking more into nutrition, since we've had a lot of people saying, I don't know what to eat when I'm a diabetic and all I tolerate are carbs. Like, what do I do? How do I fix this? What the heck? So here's Maddie to come in and help us figure all that out. So do you want to give a short who are you and why you're here? And then we'll jump right in since this is not your first time hanging with us.
Sure, absolutely. I would be honored. So, if you are listening, then welcome or welcome back. My name is Madi Cheever. I'm a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and a certified health education specialist focused on type 1 diabetes education. A lot of words. What that says is T1D is my jam, basically.
Mhm.
And really, the way that I like to focus in on that is making sure that food and insulin work well together because it can be really
Mm.
tough to figure out all the factors and details that go into that. So,
Mhm.
this is what I do all day, every day, and I'm really excited to get to share some of that knowledge, especially for some delayed digestion, which I know we will get to chatting in depth about.
Yes, and I know that your education has, as I say loudly and proudly, changed my life. So it's not a perfect system ever. And sometimes, like, no matter how much education you have, no matter how much information you're given, sometimes you have to throw that out the window. And where the real education, I think it comes from working with somebody like you is when you understand that sometimes you have to throw it out the window, right? So then what do you do? When all of the things that you thought you knew or you understood about diabetes and delayed emptying, when you have gastroparesis, aren't working, what the heck do you do? And that's where a lot of these tips, these strategies, and just really understanding what happens in the body, I think can be life changing for people and really give them that confidence, that experience, and figuring out the what feels unfigure outable.
Yes, yeah, and diabetes, so many things are tough. Diabetes is obviously the thing I talk about all the time, but
Mhm.
I say that 2 things I say, diabetes is tough, so are you, and it's never gonna
Hmm.
be perfect, so give yourself credit and kindness and
Yeah.
do your best to make it work. It's okay, we figure it out. We are out here managing a huge, huge thing
Mm.
that, like, honestly, I don't know how we are get to do this. It's a lot of work with a lot of very
Yeah.
specific medications and dosing
Mhm.
and timing. It requires a lot of
Math.
mental presence, math. Yes, it requires a lot of I would say even some emotional intelligence, and you have to be able to
Yeah.
step up for yourself. And that can feel tough or impossible depending on the season of life. We all go through
Mhm.
things. Sometimes it feels more difficult than other times, but showing
Yeah.
up no matter what, it's not perfect. It will never be, but you can still do something and that counts.
Yeah. And I think that at least for me and for a lot of people that I've talked to who are like, now that we've started a little bit more on like a nutrition journey here where we want to focus on different ideas, give people some different things to eat because we all get stuck with maybe certain foods and we're like not afraid to go outside our comfort zone, but you just don't know where to go. And that's where these types of conversations come in. And for so many of us, diabetes or not, carbs are the most well tolerated. And if you're unsure how to dose yourself properly with your insulin, or maybe if you're not using a lot of insulin and you're using other medications to help manage, like that can be overwhelming when you get on that blood sugar roller coaster. So when you tolerate the carbs like more than fats and proteins, it causes those blood sugar swings. So, like, in a general, Maddie, what do I do?
Such a good question, and I think there's a million things we can talk about, but I'll pick a few to start, okay? So,
Mm.
um, absolutely. Something that I will say too, a lot of people come to me with a fear of carbs, and especially
Yeah.
if carbs are something that you tolerate well. The philosophy I work with is live your life and incorporate good blood sugar management. I'm not going to put you
Mhm.
in a diabetes box and then like try to make you fit your life back in. So if carbs have been a challenge, I just want you to know it is possible to have them, to have a lot of them, and to figure out the blood sugar behind it. It doesn't have
Mhm.
to be that carbs are the enemy. Carbs can be our friend. And if that's what you tolerate best, great. I think that that's great. And it's maybe not because we don't tolerate other things, but because you know what works in one
Mhm.
capacity and we can figure out the blood sugar side of things. So hopefully, the message I've got across so far is number one, carbs are not our enemy. Carbs are
Mhm.
tasty and they are our friends and we like them and love them. Right. And
Yes.
then I would say we just figure out how to add a little bit of balance. So can we have that carb focus, add in a little bit of balance? Maybe if a fat or a protein or something is a little less tolerable for you, can we still add a little bit of balance somehow, some way? What we actually have to do is no matter what, we have to find what actually works for you and
Yeah.
in your body. Because if it doesn't, it doesn't. No one
Mhm.
gets to tell you otherwise. And if they do, maybe just throw up that little red flag. But take a look at that and say, okay, like is the provider I feel most supported by, find who you feel aligned with. But ultimately,
Yeah.
you should be finding what works for you.
Yeah. So when your digestion is unpredictable, and I know that you and I have had many conversations about this ourselves, where like, how do you start developing that insulin strategy around that unpredictability? Because even a normal person can have kind of unpredictable blood sugars or digestion on certain days. So it's not just exclusive to us, it's just something we deal with more often. So what would be the first step in saying, okay, I need a new insulin strategy around my safe foods because I don't like this roller coaster because my tummy hurts and I don't want any more carbs, or my stomach hurts and now I'm skyrocketing and now I have to have more insulin. And we've all been there and it's really miserable, even more so when you're stuffing food or liquids in your stomach that is just going to sit there and that could produce more nausea. It could make you vomit, and then you're in a whole other situation because now you've dosed for something that is no longer in your body. So it can be very scary to figure that out. So again, Maddie, what do I do?
Yeah, I love it. Well, I actually think a really important key that I heard you say that I want everyone to make sure they've really honed in on is insulin strategy. We're
Hmm.
not saying insulin guess, we're not saying insulin estimate, although it is that
Yeah.
as well. It's a
Hmm.
strategy. And so if you're running into those highs because this timing thing went and then this happened and then you had to have carbs because you were going low, now you're high, that happens, it makes sense, but we have to figure out the why. Now, whether we have maybe gastroparesis, maybe we have T1, maybe you have both, maybe you have none, I don't know. But whatever it is that's going on for you, we have to find the patterns. Sometimes those patterns feel very impossible to find. I'll use a basic example if I can. So, for myself, I know myself, my blood sugar is imperfect, okay? And so, here's what I know though. When I wake up, and it's, let's say, a normal day, a typical day, and I wake up and, my alarm went off. I'm like, okay, gotta get up now. Yay. Maybe that's sarcasm, maybe not, but I'm fine, right? And I'm waking up. That's a day where I'd say, okay, my blood sugar is probably, I have an automated insulin delivery
Hmm.
system, probably starting at my target about 110 because my algorithm's really dialed in. Now, if I wake up and just this, if I wake up, you know how I said, "Oh, yeah, I wake up and, the birds are chirping, whatever." If I wake up and I'm like, "What time is it?" Have you ever woken up like that?
Every morning lately.
Yeah. I am waking up that stressed and maybe my
Hmm.
spiked or something like that. I know my body already and my blood sugar goes to 180 for no good reason.
Yep.
And although it feels like no good reason and it felt like that for many years, I learned, oh, this is what's happening. This is what it's causing. So, guess what I do? I'm not recommending this to anyone, but what I do is I take 1 or 2 units off the bat if I wake up like that because I have seen time and time again without fail that that is what happens. Now,
Yeah.
that's a basic example, right? I'm not even talking about digestion. I'm not even talking about carbs. I'm not even, I mean, there's a little bit of insulin strategy there. But
Mm.
the key factor is, well, how do you figure this out when maybe you don't know so much what's going on? That's the thing I hear a lot of people asking is they come to me and they're like, well, I have no clue why I'm at 180 in the morning. Like, is it because I woke up stressed? I don't know. Well, I don't know. Is it baseline sickness? Is it dehydration?
Hmm.
Is it just that you like ate something different last night and maybe had something? high fat, high protein, and now you're stuck high at 2 a.m. and you never came back down because your insulin dialed in for the correct amounts, but you actually needed quite a few more units for that situation. Woo, that was a whole mouthful. But those are the types of thing where I say, okay, slowly and steadily to find that insulin strategy. That's actually the key. But we have
Yeah.
to figure out the details that impact you. So, my best piece of advice off the bat, something I am saying, is keep track of the data.
Mhm.
If something works, great. Maybe you can recreate that another time for some reason, somehow, some way. And if it doesn't work, maybe it doesn't feel great, but you're learning a lot of detail about what's going on. And even if
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense yet, you'll eventually connect those dots if you're being intentional, being aware, and keeping to track.
Yeah, and I think, like, we hear all the time, and I say it a lot about track your food, track your symptoms, and I think there even is some nuance in that where you can have a date and just, like, word vomit some stuff onto the page and you're done, you're like, "I tracked for the day." But it's when you're being, again, intentional with what you're tracking to see that, and then you zoom out and you look at it, and all of a sudden it's like all these patterns start to emerge, and you're like, "Oh, so this matched this, and then these things happen, and wait, what?" And I think that that's what is missed sometimes when we tell people to track, to journal, to keep an eye on things. Like, I didn't notice what some of my patterns were until I really focused on what I was tracking and why. And I think that, again, when you are dealing with slowed emptying and you're in it, just thrown in, and they're like, don't eat fat, don't eat fiber, don't eat red meat, don't eat this, don't eat your vegetables because they're too fibrous, or, peel them, no seeds, no this. You're like, what the heck do I do? And it's so much overwhelming information that it's now you're saying track your food and your symptoms and when you go to sleep and when you wake up and all these things, and you're just like, I'm done, I'm out, I'm not tracking nothing, because that is too hard and valid. That's a lot to do, especially if no one sits down and just breaks each of those things apart. So I know you're right. I can't say I think. I know you're correct in that there is that intention behind what you're doing and finding those patterns to help develop that strategy for you. Maybe later in the day is when maybe you need less carbs because of how slow things are moving in your body, that maybe you need to adjust your ratios on your macros for the day. Maybe front load your day, maybe you backload your day. How are you going to know if you're not keeping track of it to figure that out? But yeah, it's so difficult. I mean, I know I complain to you all the time, but it's
Well,
very difficult.
it is. It's a lot, and something that I heard from you and that I felt from you and that I know I felt from so many others is what you just described, the tracking of all the details. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Emotionally, it's a lot, and you may feel the heaviness of that if you're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on." But okay, now Maddie's saying to track some patterns. Okay, well, what is that even? Patterns, by the way, those are the key. Oh my gosh, if I've learned
Mhm.
anything, it is patterns. They show you a lot if you can find them. And so here's what I want you to know though, with that emotional heaviness, it is heavy. It's a tough thing. I'm not saying anything that's like super easy. I wish I had an overnight solution for everyone. I'd probably have like a lot more money if I did. But you know what I will say though is that with that heaviness, here's the thing that I challenge you to think about is have you ever gone to the doctor and you're in that appointment, it's not your first rodeo with them, you're back for a follow-up, right? Maybe you see them every few months. Maybe I'm talking about an endo. Maybe I'm talking about a gastro specialist whoever it is that is on your care team. Those individuals. Now, imagine you come to them. They try to give you solutions, but if they don't know what's really going on, if you don't know what's really
Mhm.
going on, no one's going to know what's really going on.
Yep.
So, although it can feel like it's an emotional weight, and it is, if it's really overwhelming, take the day, take the weekend, take the week, take the month, whatever you need to do to find that balance. But
Mhm.
you can start to track those things. I am so convinced that your knowledge of your body is the ultimate power that you have because
Oh,
your provider,
absolutely.
yeah, your provider is there to help guide you and educate you and get you what you need. But ultimately, you are the driver, right? You are the one that is sitting in that seat saying, okay, what am I doing with this? Where am I going? What's happening? What's not? That's why they ask for symptoms, right? Or have you felt
Mhm.
this in the last 2 weeks? Whatever it may be, they're trying to gather data that can help them be a little bit more um, to connect the theory to the reality or to be diagnostic perhaps
Yeah.
and those are the things. So if you take away anything, it is heavy. Pick the thing that feels realistic and in control. Maybe it's that you track just your sleep, see how that impacts you. Do you notice a difference on the weekdays versus the weekends? Is your sleep different on the weekdays versus the weekends?
Mhm.
Oh, is it actually your work stress on the weekdays versus oh, how interesting. Okay. And all of a sudden, these seemingly perhaps not related things could be very related, just depending on
Mhm.
what we find with that tracking.
Yeah, and thank you for calling me out. Appreciate it. Um
I wasn't trying to. We all do it.
But, it's so true, and I think, again, it's, like, such a simple thing, but it is and can be very overwhelming when you're dealing with especially, like, if you're newly diagnosed and you're still trying to figure out what the hell is going on with you, or if you're like me and you got diagnosed so long ago, at this point, you're burnt out, and you just don't wanna do it anymore because it's hard and you're tired. So you have to figure out, like, where do you start and where do you look? But if you don't have somebody or something that can help provide you some of that direction, then it gets really lost and you just still feel like you're spinning your wheels. And, that's where a lot of this conversation, I think, comes in because there's such a lack of nutrition awareness for us and even for type 1 diabetics too, because we've talked about that before when you're first diagnosed. But for gastroparesis specifically, considering it's a disease around, like, digestion, you would think that the nutrition would be the priority, but unfortunately, it's not always. So, like, when you add in the type 1 diabetes and then you add in, like, the carb component and the strategy, but then you look at your carbs and then you look at, like, fiber and you look at fat and fiber and you're like, "Well, this is a healthy carb, right? But it has a certain level of fiber that I'm not sure that I tolerate." So it's like, how do I eat this food that's good for one part of me, but may or may not be good for another part of me? Like, again, how do I make those decisions if I don't have the background information or the education to understand, like, how does a certain amount of carbs and fibers digest in a normal stomach? So how are they going to digest in mine? Is there a way to break that down a little bit more so I can still have that healthy carb?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's several components to touch on. And the first thing I will say is, of course, if you don't have a care team or provider who's giving you information, it shouldn't be on you to figure it all out. But oftentimes it is on us to figure it all out. It's
Mhm.
unfair, and no one intentionally tries to be like, okay, just figure it out by at least hopefully not. But sometimes that is how it feels, and that's what happens. And so first of all, if you don't have any knowledge or information on what you're doing, I recommend finding resources, finding people that you admire, that you enjoy, that you feel like they're giving you really good, proper information. It can be hard to distinguish that online these days now, but
Yeah.
if you ever want to be friends, come find me at Type 1 Type 1. I'll make sure that you have all the at least the T1D knowledge specifically.
Mhm.
And then from there, though, I think I hear different factors. So let's roll with that example of like fiber, for example. I heard you say
Mhm.
fiber in carbs. Obviously, if you don't know this already, a fiber is a type of carb. So when we're talking about fiber, it's like the rectangle, square, square, rectangle. Like
Yeah.
not every rectangle is a square, but all squares are technically rectangles. If you understand that, that's how we think about fiber. So all
Mhm.
fibers are technically carbs. Not all carbs are fiber. We also have sugars and starches and stuff like that. So it's the carb umbrella. So we know that those things are correlated, okay? They're connected. And so if you have a food source that you're wanting to eat or that you feel like you should eat, like, okay, this is something that's healthy. This is something that's good for me. Well, first of all, it depends on your tolerance. And we already
Yeah.
mentioned, right? How do you even figure that out? Well, one bite at a time is how you're going to figure that out. And I would
Yeah.
slow and steady wins the race, right? And that big sigh, I'm sure so many people feel what you just felt because it's trial and error to the max. And
Yeah.
sometimes the error is just not so fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. But I think that, especially like with fiber, fiber is such a, I don't know, I think it's becoming a hot topic. I think it's our next protein, of
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
protein of health. But
It's true though. We all need the fiber, but
oh,
like again, when you're told like don't eat fiber, but yet the other side of the coin is eat your fiber because if you get too backed up and things aren't moving, that'll make something else worse. So
yeah,
again, where do we make like where do we learn how to draw that line? Because fiber is such a hot topic and how much fiber I tolerate to what you tolerate are going to be vastly different.
yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you make that decision?
It's a hard decision to make. And again, I think maybe like knowing what really works best for you, you're going to be able to understand it much more if you're at I'll call it a baseline. If you're at a
Mhm.
baseline where you can build things in, but if your body is just being triggered and so many things are having an impact, I would say step one is to calm the system down, see what we can
Yeah.
do to get ourselves to a baseline to where you're like, okay, maybe my bowel movements are kind of normal. Maybe I don't feel absolutely awful every single day. Maybe get to that baseline, whatever that is, the baseline, like the survival point, right? We get to that
Mhm.
point, like, okay, I can take a breath and then work from there. So if you're past that point and you are able to, okay, now I can work from there, then I would say, what fiber sources? Well, let's just talk about fiber even more. There's different types of fiber. So there's soluble and insoluble fiber. Whoa, what the heck does that mean? Well, it has to do with water and hydrogen and carbon change, lots of different things. And so, soluble fiber is it's going to dissolve in water. So it's advocated for as a digestive benefit,
Mhm.
thinking outside of GP, because we see a little bit of a slow digestion, slower blood sugar spike, right? Because it slows things down. Now,
Mhm.
that can be advantageous, obviously, generically speaking, or that could be very hurtful and triggering,
Yeah.
depending on where your body is. So there's soluble fiber, and then there's also insoluble fiber. And I'll say soluble fiber is technically recommended regardless if you're on the diarrhea or the constipation side of things or anywhere in
Hmm.
between. Soluble fiber is friend to all. Insoluble fiber, theoretically speaking, insoluble fiber is more so the thing that's recommended if you're constipated. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
yeah, you're constipated, eat fiber. They're often talking about insoluble. It's a little bit more of like a bulking, so it adds bulk to the stool. It helps things pass through. It's not really digested. So,
Yeah.
this is interesting to know because if you can't digest it, well, does that mess with your system? Maybe, maybe not. And you have to now figure that out. So, when you're doing things like tracking, what did I say? Okay, well, maybe you could track your foods for a few days and then you track your, let's say, maybe the symptoms that you experience. I know I used bowel movements as an example. There may actually be more specific symptoms that you might want to track. But let's say you track those two things. Let's just say food and bowel movements for the sake of this
Mhm.
example. So if you're tracking those two things, well, we could say, oh, okay, well, let's say we have a week that has a lot more of a soluble fiber, and then we have a week that has bit more of an insoluble fiber. Well, does that actually have an impact? Maybe, maybe not. Some people
Yeah.
probably have no impact, but if you notice an impact, that is helpful information and you can
Mhm.
start to use that to your advantage and to help you with your awareness of what could or maybe isn't a trigger.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really important. And just even thinking about tracking, I know tracking my blood sugar, most of us are on CGMs at this point. I don't honestly know any type 1 diabetic that's not on a CGM at this point. But to each their own, whatever works. But I've noticed that when I am tracking the blood sugars too, to see the spikes and the drops around the food, the digestion, the constipation, or the time, the finally when, you're able to have a bowel movement, like adding that in too, because I think to a degree, since the CGM kind of does it for you, it's a little bit easier to track with the reports and everything that you can get. But when you match those up, I even notice the spikes and the drops and the stability around the bowel movements, around what I was eating and the types of food that I was eating. So you kind of like mush all of these things together and you see this tracking and you're like, okay, so that was too much insoluble fiber, or that was too much soluble fiber, matching that with what I was eating to the blood sugar, to the bowel movement. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I feel like I've solved this really crazy equation. Might only solve it for that week though, and that's okay because I noticed a pattern that I can move into the next week to see if it kind of works with something else. And it is interesting to see, and I hate that I constantly come back to it's trial and error. You got to figure it out. But just knowing the difference of those types of fibers, or when you might want one type over another, one food or another food, that for digestion, that might seem like a great idea, like a sweet potato. I know we've talked about sweet potatoes. We love sweet potatoes. We love all tomatoes, potatoes in this world, right? But sometimes, depending on how you make it for yourself and depending how you eat it, how much of it will add a certain type of fiber, and then you might not have the outcome that you wanted. You're
Mhm.
not going to remember that if you didn't track it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, I don't trust my brain to remember anything, to be honest.
No.
All down.
No.
But so you make a really interesting point, and here's I just wanna go back to something we said earlier. I just gave you an example of soluble versus insoluble fiber. Now and you used it in an example too, but if you're, like, sitting here, "Oh my gosh, that sounds so overwhelming," take a step back, okay? Maybe, like, we know about some soluble, insoluble fiber things, but, like, take a step
Mhm.
back. If you go into MyFitnessPal, it's just tracking fiber. That's okay.
Yep.
Start there.
Yep.
And who knows, maybe you realize that the total fiber, like, oh my gosh, if I have a meal and it's more than 10 grams of fiber, that is doing me dirty. Okay, great.
Yep.
Now you know. And again, remember that if you are already in a place where your body is triggered, try to get that to calm down. Try to work
Mhm.
on getting back to your baseline first. And then you can do these things. And then you can think about these things, right? There's a
Yeah.
certain point where you have to focus on survival, and then you can focus on fine tuning and manipulating the things that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I've had to do that multiple times, right? Like, and I think that's something that's often forgotten about when you have somebody that's maybe had gastroparesis for a while, right? Or somebody that's new and they're looking to those of us who've been in the space, been dealing with this for longer than a year or two, right? And sometimes we look like we have it figured out. We absolutely don't. We just have some things figured out. And I've noticed as I've adjusted and things have changed and my body has changed over the years that I have to consistently go back to that baseline. It might not be, every week. It might be every couple months. It might be during flares, but to go back. And then as I'm learning these things, my triggers might be different the next time I go through. The impact of fiber might be different the next time, how much fat I can have. And I know we've talked about the like blood sugar strategies around fat and proteins as well with that secondary bolus, which for anybody listening that doesn't know type 1 diabetes, you might be like, what the heck are you talking about? But I never thought about having to bolus for something other than carbs.
Yeah.
And then that's a new strategy that I added in that made me tolerating higher fats and higher food so much easier. Did it make it easy? No, it just made it easier. And I started to identify those patterns to go in and say, okay, this is something that I need to see. This is something I'm noticing. So this is something that I'm going to apply going forward. And every trial and error is different. Every outcome is almost different, but we get there hopefully eventually the more we talk about these things and ask these questions. Like, I'm hoping that as people are listening to this and maybe they've never had someone talk about like their fiber to their bowel movements, to their CGMs, to their trial and error, to their baseline, they're like, oh, okay, I have a place to start now. That's the whole point.
Yeah,
That's the whole point.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the mention of CGMs too. That is the best place where we can find this trend data. What I often do with clients, and this is the basic way I describe it, is I take food logs and blood sugar reports and I
Hmm.
put them together and say, what's happening? And that this in between is where we can really find some information. And if you're only able to be on a manual monitor for now, like that's okay. I had to go the first few
Yeah,
years. I don't know how I did that. I don't know how anyone does.
I
If you're
don't I
doing
don't
that right
either.
now,
I don't
kudos.
either.
But also, are you okay? Just let us know if there's anything we can do to be helpful. But a lot of the times what we're doing is we are problem solving, right? And
Yeah.
we're sleuthing, we're detectives in our own health, and we are saying, okay, well, what's with the food? What's with the blood sugar? What's happening together? And oftentimes, just like you said, a lot of people don't get taught about digestion. That's actually, regardless of if you have delayed digestion or not, I teach everyone with type 1 about their digestion because
Yeah.
it has an impact, just like you said, with that secondary
Mhm.
bolus. Well, if you have delayed digestion, you're going to need that. Well, it's just a little later than some people, but you might still need it.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but maybe. And knowing those things, like okay, when I was in high school, I vividly remember that my mom makes the best spaghetti. No one can convince me otherwise. Sorry to anyone who makes spaghetti. My mom's is better. It is what it is. And so we had spaghetti a lot, right? It's a big crock pot meal and whatever, you make all the noodles and stuff. And you eat it for days. We did spaghetti tacos the second day. It was always fun.
Yum.
Yeah,
Yum.
it was a good time, right? But I vividly remember waking up so many times at 2 a.m. when I didn't have an automated pump, when I didn't have sometimes when I was just on manual, injections, and I would wake up at 2 a.m. and my blood sugar was stuck in the 200s, but I crushed it, so I wasn't sure what happened because, like, I know that when I went to sleep, my blood sugar was fine, and then I wake
Yeah.
up a few hours later and it's not. Well, that was a huge, huge hint at what was going on, and I'll give it away, it was digestion. But they don't
Uh-huh.
teach us this. They don't have time. They don't have the sometimes they didn't have the knowledge, right? And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But it's now becoming a lot more common knowledge, which is good. And knowledge in the T1 space in insulin is continuing, is progressing. But I think that's something else too. Is like the insulin itself. Regardless, we've talked about the word strategy already. Insulin itself requires strategy, right? Like if you're type 1, you've heard the word pre-bolus, whether or not you do
Mhm.
it, respect. But we've all heard it. Well, why do we pre-bolus? For a reason, right? It's
Yeah.
for our insulin to work on time. Now, this pre-bolus idea, the typical 15-minute wait part, that is for a typical digestion. So remember the key here, and actually, this is a new key. So we've said number one, you need some insulin strategy. Number two, if you don't know what's going on, you might need to do some tracking. Number
Mhm.
three, though, you have to understand what works individually for you. Just like a carb ratio, right? Like if I have a 1 to 10 carb ratio and someone has 1 to 15, I can't just use a 1 to 15 to be successful. Even though it works for them, it's not going to work for me.
Yep.
Why? Because my body is mine, not theirs. So, individual and strategy and making sure that you're keeping track of what's going on. It will slowly but steadily build your knowledge and understanding and the tools in your toolbox to be able to figure it out. Because even if you don't understand it, if you're able to get with someone who does understand it, to have them help educate you, guide you, or support you, then you'll understand it. It might just take some
Yeah.
time. Or,
Yeah, I know. And that I think for me around my blood sugar strategy has been the biggest change is really like things go haywire all the time. I've had blood sugars where I'm like, that's got to be a lie. It's not that. Okay, no, it really was that low, or oh no, it really was that high. Oops. And I'm like, I did everything right. I weighed, I measured, I double checked, I did everything. I'm on like the right strategy. I have the right insulin ratio, like our carb ratio. I'm like, everything is right. And it still went wrong. And I remember you said something to me when I was complaining about this exact thing at one point. And there was another day where I'm like, everything went right here. Like, look how beautiful everything is great. And then I'm like, but this day was terrible. And it's like, the bad days happen, but it was the good days. Let's look at that. That's the strategy because it worked. You can't predict those bad days because our digestion is just unpredictable. And realizing and not freaking out completely at every turn that didn't work out just right, or where I'm outside of the ratios that I like, or my blood sugar goes too high or it goes too low. I mean, lows are more frustrating because they can be scary, especially if you can't get out of them. And we've all been there. But I think it's really just knowing, like, okay, so what happened here? did I miss something? Like, did I forget to pre-bolus? Did I forget a secondary bolus? If the answer to those are no, and, I did everything right, it's like, okay, this was just a bad or an off day. And then we just kind of reevaluate the next day and see we could do the exact same thing the following day with the same foods at the same times. And guess what? It's perfect. And you're like sitting here annoyed as all hell. But you know what? Sometimes diabetes, just diabetes. Sometimes gastroparesis just does its thing. And you have to, I think, really with those tools and figuring it out instead of feeling that panic that I felt years ago. Because I'm like, is this all of these crazy numbers? Is this harming me? Is this hurting me? Am I ever going to find a safe food? Am I ever going to figure this out? That's what changed because the tools and the idea and the strategy and the understanding of what was happening in my body was what made all the difference to make the adjustments going forward.
Yeah, and actually something I'm hearing from you that I think is a really important thing to emphasize is this we're talking a lot about things that are emotion related, but we haven't in them exact terminology yet. But I heard you using some language that gives feeling, right? It's feeling.
Mhm.
We're feeling things, and sometimes those feelings suck, right? Or sometimes,
Yeah.
maybe for example, something you were saying is like, oh, okay, if it works out this day or doesn't, now you have data. Yeah, and I know I said that plenty of times. Here's what I want you to hear though, if you're listening to this. If it works out or if it doesn't, that doesn't have to be a personal statement on you. As best
Yeah.
as you can, I think removing yourself from the success or failure of blood sugar, if you can separate that just a little bit, emotional resilience is important and very helpful in this journey because you need a lot more of it than a lot of people can understand. But if you can separate yourself and say, okay, that blood sugar didn't work out. And usually what I'll even say, and even if this is a blatant lie, I lie to myself sometimes. I'll say, "Okay, that's not my fault, but what happened? What happened? Like, what could I do next time that's a little different?" And like, sure, maybe
Yeah.
it is that I totally didn't like I chose not to bolus, and then 20 minutes later I realized I forgot about it and was like, "Oh my gosh, okay, that's a choice. I know it. It's okay." But I can separate myself from that. I can take accountability too. I could say, "You know what? Yeah, I didn't make a great choice for myself." Or I could say, "Okay, that happened. I'm gonna learn from it." And then I keep going. And it doesn't have to be, I don't have to beat myself up about it. I don't have to
Yeah.
feel bad about it. I'm not a worse person for it. And especially if you've been sitting in an endo office and they're like, what did you eat 3 weeks, 2 days, and 12 hours ago? And you're like, food, probably. I don't know how I would know
Yeah.
that. Really. And it's like, okay. Like this is very
Yeah.
obscure. Man, if those were security questions, that would be really tough. But if you can figure out those things, that will help. And those obscure questions that you might get in your endo office, sometimes they feel not so great. So you're like, dude, I don't know. I don't eat the same thing every day. And if they expect you to be eating the same thing every day, know that you don't have to. And if you don't like that idea, well, great. You're aligned with someone and it's not them.
Mhm.
Okay? We got your back here.
Yeah.
We know that we know that we live in this modern world. We have so many choices. Live your best life, eat your best foods, and we just figure out the strategy with
Yeah.
some self kindness.
Yeah. No, and that's big because there are so many days as you're trying to figure out what works. Even for me lately, I'm like, that used to work and it didn't now. Like, what the heck is happening? And it's easy to play that blame game, get down in the bad feelings with that. And that's okay to acknowledge that and feel that. No one's judging you. We all deal with that at one way, shape, or form. But I think again, to really just acknowledge that it happened and see what you can learn from it is huge. And that's how I started to pick up on other patterns, other things, whether it's an emotional pattern around the spike or the drop, or just how I was feeling when my blood sugar was at a certain level or my stomach was feeling a certain way. And I think honestly, the most mind-blowing thing for me in realizing like this is what I do now, or this is what I can do, is to completely go back to the protein, fats, and carbs and understanding those macros and working together. Because noticing that, talking to you about it, learning about what all those things meant, I'm like, okay, now I feel like I can make better choices. Now I feel like I can understand what's happening. So when someone says, like, I don't know what to eat, all I tolerate is this potato, it's like, okay, well, if you tolerate potatoes, how could you maybe make it differently, right? To maybe add a little, I don't know, maybe eat some scrambled eggs with your potato and then see how that level of fat works with you and then see what your blood sugar does. Does it spike? Does it stabilize? Does it okay for a little while and then spikes up later? You notice that pattern and you go back to your insulin strategy to figure out how to deal with it when that happens and what to do around that. And it's very empowering when you can acknowledge the emotion with it and not necessarily separate it, but just acknowledge it and then not, again, move on from it, but move with it going forward into your next choices.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that potato, that's a perfect example of, okay, well, if that is your survival route right now, guess what? You're surviving. Okay, good.
Mhm.
Now, we make it different. Like, I mean, I don't know. Can you turn it into a gnocchi? And all of a sudden, maybe that
Mhm.
works because it's a little more carb, but it's still your potato. And okay,
Mhm.
cool. Maybe that works. If you can have a white potato, can you have a sweet potato? Does that add some variety? Okay. Can you have slightly different quantities? Okay. Can you have
Mhm.
something that has a potato base, but maybe that's not the only ingredient? Or, like you said, adding the scrambled egg. Cool. Let's see how that
Mhm.
goes. That's really one of the best ways to find what works for you. It's slow and steady wins the race. And I know that that's sometimes annoying, but oftentimes I will find, especially like if you have okay, I'm going to say something that is a little bit bold, but I stand by it fully. I often don't actually give out meal plans directly. A lot of people think, "Oh, dietitian meal plans." And like I can do that,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. It's easy, but what I actually think is even better is to say, "Okay, well, what do you actually like?" Because what if I give
Yep.
you, let's just say I give you a meal plan and I'm like, "Okay, you know what sounds like a really good balanced meal? Yogurt, granola, and some berries." And you're like, "First of all, I'm never eating yogurt in my life. Texture, ew." But okay, cool. Well, what's that meal plan going to do for you? Nothing, right?
Yep.
And who knows? Maybe the rest of meals are great, but let's just assume you don't like any of those either, or they don't work for you, something like that. Okay, well, now all of a sudden we've been given this thing that's a theoretical good, but it's not a realistic thing
Yeah.
that's going to work for you, maybe not a realistic good. So, okay, so now we take that to our knowledge, we do what we can with that information, and just know that if someone is telling you, oh, this should work, or whatever, the bold thing that I was worried about saying is like, if you have a provider that looks you in the face and says, oh, yeah, this is for sure what should work. But if it doesn't work for you, red flag. Find someone else.
Yeah.
Find someone who
Yeah.
aligns with you, who will work with you, who will be collaborative and understanding in the fact that sometimes it's kind of a difficult thing to figure out.
Yeah. No, it is, especially when you are just unpredictable and you don't know yourself yet and you're still trying to figure it out. Like, I'm still trying to figure it out. I have, we've talked about it and I shared a few weeks ago a pizza recipe. And I think that's what started one of the carb conversations. And I didn't realize, again, that was a food that I had to do a secondary bolus for.
Mhm.
Now, another provider might be like, well, just stop eating that food, or give yourself a different bolus in the beginning of your pre-bolus and do this. And maybe that could work. Like removing the food completely would work. But if I tolerate it and I like it and it makes me happy, that's just going to make me sad to remove that from my diet. So really, the better piece of that, the better strategy, the better conversation with the provider is, how can we make this work in your diet? How can we make this work for you? What swaps can we make? What things can we do? How can we adjust the strategy around these foods that you really, really like to make this feel better for you? Because, like you said, if you give me a food to eat and I'm like, I can't eat that. And I've had that happen, not with you, but with other people where it's like, here, eat this. I'm like, hi, I have gastroparesis. I've tried that. I actually can't eat that. Well, that's what we tell people to eat. Cool. Thank you. That was really not helpful. So, how do you make that work for you is finding what works for you, but that
Mhm.
takes time, and to say, what do you like? Why try dairy if you don't like dairy?
Yeah. Yeah, especially if it's something that you like, you'd like it or not, if it is something that is triggering for your body. I know that it's maybe perhaps it's not an allergy, right? But if something is so triggering that the negatives are just it's the what is it? The lime is not worth the squeeze or whatever. If it's not worth it, why can't I think of that analogy? Is that right? The lemon's
I
not worth
think so.
the lime?
Yeah.
The citrus fruit is not worth the juice I don't know, whatever. You guys know what I'm saying. Then all of a sudden, okay, well, we can figure out from there. But if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work. And sometimes what I'll do in my mind is like, you could treat it like an allergy, right? Like you could say, okay,
Mhm.
I cannot eat this. And usually, if you're like, oh, I don't want it, thanks, I'm not interested. Sometimes people push and they don't realize it. But if you're like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm just letting you know, I cannot eat this then and if you're able to be direct, this is a part where you have to have a little bit of a voice, you have to have a little bit of gusto behind what it is that you're but if you can figure that out with confidence and comfort, finding out your communication skills is key throughout this process as well
Yeah.
because you have to advocate for yourself. And that is just, I mean, I think type 1 diabetes, again, that's what I specialize in, right? Type 1 diabetes alone could be the skills that you have to learn and gain from it. That could be racked up into a degree itself. Like there's so much
Mhm.
to know and learn and it's hard, but you take it one day at a time. So I'm just going to again say, I've already said there's, emotional kindness, there's communication skills, there's trial and error, there's tracking, there's pattern awareness, there's insulin strategy, there's all these things that may feel overwhelming. Pick one,
Mhm.
start there and keep working. And if you're like, I truly can't figure this out, then remember, there are a lot of people who want to help you out there. That's why so many people do what they do. That's
Yeah.
that's why I wish someone would have done what I did when I needed someone and I didn't have
Yeah.
anyone for that, but that's why I am the resource I am is because I deserved to have that support and I didn't, but everyone deserves to have the support that they need, and if you don't have it, I
Yeah.
encourage you to find it.
Yeah, and that's what we're hoping to do with this, right? Like, nobody should walk away from even this conversation being like, I've got this on lock. I know exactly what to do. Like, we're not telling you that because you're different than my strategy, your strategy. We want you to feel empowered to say, okay, what's my first step to find another safe food that works? I've got 1 to 2 safe foods and one of them spikes my blood sugar and I don't know what to do, but I can't figure it out. We want to give you that place to start as much as we would love to give you the answer, right? Or the magic food or anything there. Like, hell, I would love that answer too. So, if anybody has it, I'll take that. But it's that thing where we want you to just feel like you have a place to start. And that if you can take 1 step, then at some point you can take 2 steps, then you can take 3 steps. And if you can't make that 4th step because you're stuck, at least you know where you can kind of lean back into to kind of trial and error the next couple pieces on where to start and how to make those decisions and how to get there for yourself. And I know I said this, a couple minutes ago, but for me and my strategy and my understanding of my digestion and what to do and when to do it all came back to just understanding that baseline and that first step on where to start, which is tracking. It is understanding. It's asking questions. It's involving other people in my care and knowing that if somebody, like you said, couple red flags, if they're not giving you an answer or making you feel like you're difficult for asking questions, then that tells me that there's got to be another provider out there because there really, while there might not be the magic answer, there's no magic cure to anything. There is something that can help make your life better, even if it's just 1%.
Yeah.
That's still 1% better. We just had a podcast episode about that, talking about like that little bit better. When you look at that, you're like, oh, it's just 1%. 1% is better than nothing. So
Right.
if we keep compiling that, if we keep being 1% better, we keep finding that next 1%, eventually you're like, wait, things are starting to work a little bit better. And I have the tools, the tips, the tricks, the support to help me through that. And if I can't figure it out, I know a good dietitian to talk to help me figure it out.
Ooh, uh, not watching, then you just, what you need to know is I was looking around there, but absolutely, and I hope that you feel that you're able to walk away with a little bit of that empowerment, to take
Yes.
control of your life, of your choices, of your foods, of your I know we can't fully control our blood sugar or digestion, but you have the power. And I know this is a small plug, but you have permission. That is the
Mhm.
title of my book for a reason. You have permission. Do it. Do it.
Mhm.
Try it. Eat it. It doesn't work. Can we figure out how? If it really doesn't work, okay, maybe it truly is a food that we can't have. And maybe it's not actually that we can't have it, but it's that we choose to not have it because the harm is just not
Mhm.
worth it, right? The feelings that we have are not worth it.
Yeah.
I was told in the beginning, you gave a pizza example, for just diabetes, I was told that you're not allowed to eat pizza for years. I mean, in high school, are you kidding me? Like, what else am I going to do at the parties? There's only
Yeah.
pizza. And
Yeah.
so told that I couldn't have this, so I felt just lonely and I felt like I was um just kind of different than others, and I knew that, and I was okay, but it just was I mean, it kinda
It
sucked.
hurt.
Oh, it did,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I realized eventually that it wasn't that I can't eat pizza, it's that the insulin and the digestion is kinda hard, so you really shouldn't unless you know what you're doing, and I figured out what I'm doing, and guess what? I have pizza regularly. Why? Because I
Yep.
can, and it doesn't
Mhm.
hurt my blood sugar.
Yeah, and there are now that we know more things, like my favorite crust is a sourdough crust. I can't just go out and eat anybody's pizza. I can't do that. That's something that diabetes or gastroparesis that I cannot do. So I make the choice to eat, in my tiny little window, in my tiny little bit of options, and I made that work for me. But it didn't just happen overnight, and I talked about that in some other places too, and everyone's like, "Oh, you love pizza so much. You're always" I'm like, "'Cause it's a fan-freaking-tastic food," and it was one of the foods that I yearned for when I couldn't eat it. So now for me, like, all joking aside, like, it being able to eat that now and find a way to incorporate it doesn't always work perfectly. Even my own pizza sometimes I'm like, "Oh, nope, not doing that today. Cannot do that. It will hurt me." That's okay. But I love every single bite that I get because I know that I found what works. I worked really hard to get there too. And I have a nice little strategy. We're going to keep coming back to that word today strategy around how to make it work for you. So, all of this with Spoonful of Spite is not to tell you exactly what to do, it's not giving you every answer. It's giving you the education, it's giving you the confidence, and hopefully, the confidence and the support to say, I want to make this work for me, and I have the tools now to do so. And hopefully, all of our T1D friends that are going to be listening to this will say, okay, I can do this because Maddie and Sam believe in me. So I can go make these decisions for myself and find some new safe foods with some great blood sugars.
Yes, I love it. I love it. And you really can. And if it's hard or if it feels impossible, again, connect with the people who make it feel
Mhm.
more possible. Ask the questions, do some research, just look through some things and talk to some people, see what's possible. Cause I think
Yeah.
we can't do everything, but we can do anything.
Yeah. I love that.
Thank you.
I'm gonna file that one away for later when I need something.
I've been saying it a lot lately. It's really been on the mind. We can't do it all, but we can do a lot.
Yeah. No, well, I thank you again for the third time that you've been here with us because you have just always been so good with how you share information, and I think that it resonates with a lot of people because it's not just about if you have diabetes. There's other people that can learn from what you are saying, what you're sharing, and it's really helpful. And I know how busy you are, so thank you for chatting with me. I appreciate it, and I know our audience will too.
Of course, absolutely. And just last thing, like find us, ask questions.
Uh-huh.
Don't be a stranger. If we have left something unsaid or if there's something that you need support in that we didn't specifically answer, we are here for a reason. Find us,
Uh-huh.
ask the questions.
Yes. where I'll say like, drop a comment, reach out to us. We appreciate and like those questions because that helps us help you, which in turn helps more people. So we're always here. Thanks, Maddie.